The Super Speedway Podcast is a Dream Bigger media production. For news, photos, show notes, and information about advertising on the podcast, visit www.thesuperspeedway.com.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Super Speedway.
I don't think the 10 was capable enough of being able to lead the race and not have somebody else pass him. You know what I mean? Like if I would have let the 10 go and just rode behind the 10, then I think the 2 would have won. So that would have been dumb.
James, that would have been dumb. Welcome to episode 87 of the Super Speedway Podcast, recorded Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. I'm your host, Eric Young. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, James Cush. James, how's it going?
Some would say listening to this podcast might be dumb. No, I'm just joking.
Right.
No, that what does that say about the Kyle Busch Brad Keselowski relationship? That's the first thing he goes to.
Right. I love the fact that, Brad seems to at least have some respect for Kyle now. I don't know if Kyle shares that for Brad, but both of them are pretty comfortable not being big fans of each other. So I'm good with that.
The shocking thing about that answer is that it seems like, maybe in hindsight, but it seems like Kyle Busch was considering it.
I know, right?
Like, in his mind, which is kind of brilliant.
That kind of shows you where Kyle has gone, though, because and why Kyle is, I think, well, he's obviously one of the favorites. He's one of 4, but why he could be a favorite going into this weekend at Homestead, and we'll preview the championship here later in the podcast, but just the different mindset that it used to be win or nothing, and now Kyle is thinking more big picture than he used to, and that makes him a championship contender where he wouldn't have been 5 years ago.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think we see that a lot in all sports now. Like, Bill Belichick for the New England Patriots, the head coach, he is like very well known for thinking the game, from the end backwards. And I think, the more we see success with analytics and, more calculated thinking, that's just something that even NASCAR, we have to consider. These guys, they just want to win races at the end of the day. But the big picture, it's the championship. And yeah, if Harvick could have got eliminated, you think Kyle Busch would have taken that.
Right. Yeah, I would think so. So how scary is it that Kyle Busch is now in essentially championship form? He already has a title to his name, and he's only 33 years old.
Yeah, I know.
That could be scary for the competition.
I still feel like Kyle Busch has left more championships out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Won. But yeah, he's only 33, and he's definitely had this is his best season. Championship or not, this is start to finish. He's been on one this year.
Definitely. Yeah. So before we get to that, let's talk about the Can-Am 500 at ISM Raceway. Obviously, we're talking about Kyle Busch because Kyle Busch won this weekend at ISM Raceway. He seals his spot in the Final Four, although it was pretty much, Kyle was pretty much in. He'd have really had to implode to not make the Final Four. But he makes it in, and so does Kevin Harvick, who was a foregone conclusion until last week's penalty, and then had some issues during the race. Flat tire at the end of the first stage, right at the end of the first stage.
Yeah.
Actually, the silver lining of that is that it happened at the end of the first stage.
Cost him stage points, but
he didn't lose all those positions in multiple laps. He only lost 1 lap, and that put him in position to get the lap back. And eventually, he got caught on pit road during a caution as well. But fortunately, all of the people he was racing did as well. And that eventually solidified into, I don't know if Kurt and Chase didn't have their issues if Harvick would have gotten in as easily as he did. But in the end, Harvick gets in pretty easily into the Final Four.
Yeah, that penalty turned out, I think, kind of what we thought, that it was going to be exciting. We didn't know what it was going to look like because we knew Harvick was going to be good. He's always good there.
Right.
But yeah, Kurt Busch really gave it his best shot. He, if he doesn't get wrecked, he's there.
Yeah,
he's got it.
Kurt definitely gave it. And the other one that gave it too, that was impressive, and they didn't talk about it a lot on the TV broadcast, of course. It's hard for me. It was my birthday on Sunday. I was at my parents' house, so I watched the race, but not 100% like watching the race. So,
Yeah.
and I think I missed like the first 20 laps because we got there a little bit late. But Clint was getting better and putting himself in position to make a run for it too, which was his only chance to get in. And Clint Boyer has a tire issue, crashes. Basically, from what I heard on Jeff Gluck's podcast, they basically said on the radio, "Hey, we're doing good. We're we might have a shot at this." And then like the next lap, the tire goes down and they hit the wall and they're out.
Yeah.
So
What a bummer.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Clint would have. I talked about it last week. I don't think Clint would have really made a lot of noise at Homestead, but
Yeah. Stuart Haas had just a crazy day.
Yeah.
Like all three, or I should say all four of their guys had shots at it.
yeah,
Even Almirola, if the end of that race plays out a little bit differently, where he can maybe get a late restart or do a dive bomb or something. I mean, he gave himself a chance.
yep,
All these guys, for that matter, gave themselves a chance. I mean, Kurt Busch led laps. Like you said, Boyer was coming. Chase Elliott had, he led a handful of laps, and Almirola finished in the top 5. So
I think this was one of the most interesting cutoff races we've seen in quite some time. This is the type of race that everybody wanted Richmond to be when Richmond was the cutoff race to get into the playoffs. And we finally, I mean, personally, I don't think, there's been some drama. We had some drama at the Roval, but really this was the drama we've been waiting for all season as far as who gets in and who gets knocked out. And obviously it made it a lot less of a battle at the end with the Kurt Busch Chase Elliott crash, but still, Almirola was there.
Yeah.
If we'd have had a caution with 2 to go, they rack him back up. Almirola's, sitting third. He's got a shot to dive bomb into the turn and take the win,
Yeah.
So
It's a great track for an elimination race, just like the Roval. We thought the Roval was a great track for an elimination race. Especially with Phoenix being kind of reconfigured to the flipping the start finish line around, so that made the restarts really kind of crazy.
right.
Just overall, it was just a start to finish, just a fantastic race. Completely opposite of what Texas was. Texas was out to lunch at the end of the day. But this was, and when you cut the field in half from 8 to 4, that's a tight box. And Kyle Busch, he was able to lock himself in after he was guaranteed to finish. I think, what was it, higher than 33rd or whatever his cutoff was eventually. That took the drama out for him, but it didn't take the drama out of the race, because that cutoff with Harvick's penalty just. If Harvick doesn't have that penalty, I don't think we have quite this show.
No, it wouldn't have been that interesting. And I think the fact that so many drivers were, still eligible, still had a shot to get in there, made it more interesting too. If Chase and Kurt don't have a chance to race in there, you're not going to see them run as hard as they did.
Yeah, and Martin Truex Jr.'s day is completely different, I think, if Harvick doesn't have that penalty, because Truex came into this race and all they had to do was survive, stay out of trouble, and that's exactly what they did.
Yep, they were just there.
Yep, they were not the cutoff man. If Harvick gets to keep that Texas win, Truex is the cutoff man, and he's the one worried about Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, and the rest. So
definitely. I did want to go back real quick though. One of the things you said Phoenix is a great track for a cutoff race. I'm going to adjust that and just say Phoenix is a great track.
Yeah, it's a great track.
We've come here twice in a season before. In an era of let's get rid of dates, this is a track I'd love to see get a second date, because Phoenix is just a spectacular track. It's always been good. It's always been great. It's always been unique. When they reconfigured it, I think they got rid of my favorite part of the track, which was how quickly you bounced out or came out to the wall out of the old turn 2, and that wall was right there when they fixed the backstretch adjustment. But then they created that dog leg with the cars diving down below the apron, which I hated at first, but I love it now, especially with that right after the start finish line. That is, the restarts over there are just freaking awesome.
Well, and the one thing you and I thought, last week, like, we weren't quite sure what to think of the restarts. We knew there was going to be the dive bombing, but one thing we'd never talked about was you're restarting on an angle.
Yeah.
That restart zone was in the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that made the restarts even, a little bit more dicey, because those cars aren't coming in on a straight line. They're, they're arced in, so that made it for interesting restarts too on their own.
And how about that line that Kyle used to get the lead at the end? He passed the wreck essentially. What,
Oh yeah,
4 car widths down off of the track.
yeah,
In the old turn 4. I mean, we've seen guys. Harvick's been one over the past few years using that apron a lot and getting all 4 tires on the apron. But
Yeah.
this wasn't 4 tires on the apron. This was the whole car down below the apron. It was insane
yeah. He
how low he
was
was
way
running.
down there. Yeah, Kyle Busch is not afraid to go find.
But
whatever
that was a
he has
line
to.
that people were using all weekend. They were using it more on at the start of runs because obviously the tires are better. But I
Yep.
mean, the truck race, the Xfinity race, there were guys running down there. Maybe not so much the truck race. The Xfinity race, there was a lot, and that just really surprised me.
I know
Um,
whenever I play Phoenix on the video game, there was times where I would really cut that corner down pretty hard too.
Well, and they showed that the restart where the wreck was with Kyle Busch going down to the bottom and how many cars he passed down there. And that's what it felt like is one of those, you go into the turn in the video game and all the AI cars just stop on the outside and you pass them. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
that's
just
what
go right to
Harvick
the
did. He just cleaned them out. He went from like 8th to 1st in one turn.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. That's a great. Yeah, that's great because for sure. I mean the track with all that blacktop out there, and they don't really limit the drivers on where they can go.
Right,
So that
yeah.
makes it exciting. I really like that there, and the speeds aren't so high that you have to worry about like you do at Talladega about running on the apron, so on and so forth. But it makes for pretty exciting stuff.
So let's talk about that real quick. The reconfigure this year, obviously they didn't change the track much. There's very little changed about the track itself, but where the start finish line is at is different. And we talked last week about our expectations for that. I expected the restarts to be a little wilder. I expected the truck race to be a little wilder. Turned out the Cup race was really the wild one, and I use wild in quotes because it wasn't that wild. We had some excitement there, but it wasn't a crazy, insane race. It just was a fun race. First of all, I guess, James, your thoughts on, are you happy with the changes they made, and did they make a real big difference this week to you?
Yeah, I think I'm happy with the changes, and I do think there was some slight differences that really added into some of the drama. Those
Right.
late restarts, I think, were even more exciting just because of where the placement of the line is.
Right.
We've talked about the entrance of the heading towards the start finish line and then coming off the start finish line. Just made, I don't know, it's just a unique look.
hmm
That's one of those things. You and I talk about that all the time. Is it doesn't have to always be a different venue, but give us some new perspective on the track. And I think that's exactly what Phoenix has given us, is just something something a little different. Make these drivers think, make it more tactical.
How great was it to see a full grandstand?
Yeah, that was cool too.
I
They
saw a
really
picture
made
of
it-
somebody from the stands, one of the 360 pictures, and I'm scrolling around and it's like, man, this looks like 2005. Like, it was
They
awesome.
really what they did is they made it so it's almost like an NFL or a big college football stadium that we normally go to, and you try to fill the big house and it's not quite full,
Right.
in Michigan. But it's almost like a soccer stadium there now, where the stands are not that big. It's like the perfect size.
Yeah, it's absolutely
for a
perfect.
NASCAR crowd now. It's perfect.
They're selling it out, but they're selling it out the week before the event, which is perfect. If you sell it
Yep.
out earlier than that, you're leaving money on the table, but you're selling it out right before the race. That's perfect.
Yep.
And we didn't talk about that. It was in the notes last week that it was a sellout for the grandstand seats at Phoenix. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
My opinion, first of all, I like the changes. I don't think there was anything wrong with the way Phoenix was before, because it was a great track, but I don't think that any of the changes hurt anything. If anything, they've helped it. One thing that I found, especially watching watching all 3 broadcasts, is how much faster the track felt, and it took me a while to figure out why that was. And the reason to me that I've come to the conclusion that it was is that because of where the grandstands are located, they don't use very many high camera angles anymore.
Yeah.
All the camera angles are low, and it was really weird because I've never seen Phoenix on the front stretch so much from the inside, or the old front stretch, from the inside of that track, from the inside of pit
Yep,
road.
they treated it like a normal backstretch.
But that was the camera that they were using, because there's no grandstands to put the camera up on top of on the outside of the track like they used to.
Right. Yep.
So, and they really didn't use the tower shots that much because the front stretch is in a turn, and they always have low cameras in the turn. So it really lot of low camera angles this weekend, and it made the track just feel a lot faster for the size that it is. So
Yeah, that's that different perspective that
Yep.
I think gives it just a, catches our eye that, we don't get when we go to the same type of track every week and we see
Right.
the same exact angles all
well,
the time.
even if you've gone to a track and changed up your location there, like I've done it at Michigan, big D-shaped track, but I've sat in center grandstand and then I've sat in turn 4, I've sat in turn 1, and it's like you're at a different track to see. I mean, you and I went and we were on the party porch back in turn 3 and got to see what
Oh,
that
yeah.
looks like, and
Yep.
it's just not the same track from different angles. So that's that's something that you get when you move like that too. So it's cool to see everybody get that perspective change, and I didn't hear any complaints. The infield is
Nope.
awesome, everything's great. The victory lane's neat. The fans get to go right up to the victory lane. I mean, for a fan zone, Phoenix has the best fan zone in NASCAR right now. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It makes you think that they took all this data that they've been gathering over the years and just kind of put it into ISM to
Yep.
make it a modern day NASCAR facility.
yeah, it's really a little bit of everything. It's Daytona Rising packed in there. It's the the garage adjustments they've done at different tracks. It's everything packed into that one thing,
Yep.
and it's pretty neat. So
Yeah, I like it a lot. Yeah. Yeah, that was now. There's no camping on the infield there anymore either, is there? All the camping's outside.
You might be right. I don't think there is. There's a lot of parking, but they've lost like half of their infield because of the giant space between pit road and the track in turn.
Which I thought was, I thought that was weird that they
Yeah.
cut their pit road so short. And I know Kurt Busch is probably ticked off about how the pit road's laid out too because of that penalty he
Right.
got. But
I felt
he-
for the guys running the cameras that were inside of that section of the track that couldn't leave it for the entire race.
yeah,
I mean, not that those guys leave the cameras anyway, but there were at least 2 cameras stationed inside of that tri-oval space that's all asphalt between pit road and the track on the front stretch. So
gotta be toasty out there, that's for sure.
yeah, especially on a giant piece of asphalt in the desert. But that's maybe nobody else cares, but that's the type of stuff I look at. Like, what are they doing the cameras? I know they had the RoboCam on the front stretch down by the start finish line, but there was definitely at least one camera manned down there, and I'm pretty sure there were 2. And so, yeah, that's the stuff I look at. I did for Supercross down at Detroit one year. We got to do the track walk, and all I'm looking at is how they position the cameras in the tough blocks and stuff around the track for those low shots and stuff. That's what I cared about. So.
Yeah, well, when you're down there, like you've been for taking photos and stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what catches your eye.
It's pretty neat. Yeah, that again, it's that different perspective of everything, and it's cool to check it out. So, is there anything else really to talk about Phoenix, James?
What do we think about Denny Hamlin's move there?
I think it's excellent. I like the fact that he went for it. He's racing for a win. He wants to get a win this season. He's not in the Final Four, but he's not afraid to get into it with those guys. I think that crash was made a ton worse by Kurt Busch. That wasn't Denny's deal. Kurt turned down into Denny and ran him, across the track. And
Yeah, it's almost like I thought at first that maybe Kurt just kind of lost it, and then I started
No.
second guessing myself. I don't know.
Kurt lit it up, and he's the one. Kurt is responsible for Chase Elliott being out of the
Now
race.
that being said, Denny Hamlin is the first guy to throw the biggest tantrum if he was still in the playoffs and that
True.
happened to him.
True.
That I know for a fact.
Yeah.
But it was just hard racing. I mean, that's what you're gonna get that out there.
I actually
You
was
know?
extremely disappointed with the crash. And the reason I was disappointed was I was so excited to see the Kurt Busch interview. And it was lame. Like,
Yeah,
I thought he was going to be fired up. I thought he was
told
going to
my
be
wife,
mad.
I said, "Oh, they're gonna fight."
That's what I
all
thought so too.
I said, "Oh man, Kurt's gonna go after him." I thought for sure, but Kurt was so dejected
Yeah.
that I don't even know if it registered at that time.
Right.
Which was a very cool social media moment. The Tony Stewart consoling Kurt Busch a little bit.
Yeah.
What a picture!
I
You
know.
never would have thought that, I was like, wow, Tony Stewart showing some like genuine compassion. That's so strange.
Yeah. Couple other things to hit on, I think, with the race, with people who had trouble and things like that, just to look at the finishing order. We know about those guys being up front. Am I even on the right page? This doesn't even seem right. Like, okay.
What?
So, Kyle Larson managed to finish 3rd in this one.
Yeah, he kind of snuck in there.
Out of nowhere. Almirola fell to 4th. Jamie McMurray, this is why I was confused. Like, Jamie McMurray was 6th. Matt Kenseth 7th.
You thought you were
Austin-
looking at 2017.
Yeah, Austin Dillon 8th, William Byron 9th, Bubba Wallace got a 10th place finish. AJ Allmendinger finishes 12th. I mean, these guys, some good finishes for these guys.
Yeah.
Michael McDowell finished 16th. Chris
Yeah, he's
Buescher
up there.
18th.
Ty Dillon in the top 20.
Yeah,
David Reagan.
Matt DiBenedetto 20th, 21st.
I was so bummed because my fantasy team, I really needed a monster week, and I got a good one, but I had DiBenedetto over Bubba Wallace, and I thought, Bubba's not that. And then Bubba goes and gets a top 10. I'm like, no, that's awesome, but no.
Right.
I need as many points as I can get. Oh, man. What'd you think of Tanner Berryhill? That he caused 2 cautions?
Yeah,
He was kind of a controversy going into the race.
right. I don't really have much to say about
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Maybe if people don't know, he hasn't raced a NASCAR National Series race since 2014 and made his Cup debut. So industry folks were pretty agitated. I'd say.
I mean,
it was,
I get it. That's what we have, these charters and stuff. I mean, I don't know. Everybody's got to have their first chance at
Well,
a
if we're
cup
gonna-
race. If
here's
you're
my-
gonna race in cup, you have to have a first race. But it does seem like
well, here's my thing. If we're gonna limit the veterans from racing in the Xfinity Series at certain points of the season,
yeah,
maybe can we? And I don't know what the cutoff is, but maybe can we consider not having guys who might not have enough experience late in the playoffs?
yeah,
That's just my only thought on it. I don't care really either way, but I don't know. It kind of feels backwards to me.
yeah. I think that's a good point, especially like you said, in the playoffs. During the regular season, it's not as much of an issue, but in the playoffs,
Like Kyle Busch racing an Xfinity race is really going to affect the points battle versus somebody like Tanner Berryhill.
right?
I mean, it's the same thing, really. Kyle Busch isn't going to be out there wrecking people probably, but who knows? Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. He brought a sponsor. He was fine.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's all about the money. Whoever brings the money gets
Yep.
the ride, and that's. I mean, I think you and I can both argue, both agree that that's one of the problems with the sport right now. And until that's fixed,
Yep.
you're going to have these situations. So
Yep. You gotta field the full field at some point. So.
Yep.
And even with Tanner Berryhill starting, it's not like he had to qualify. We didn't have a full field. We had 39 cars. So
right. Okay. Anything else there that we really need to hit on this thing? I think that.
I
pretty
think
much
we're gonna
covers
probably
it.
talk. Yeah, we're gonna probably talk about more with the championship and everything. So
Oh yeah, we'll get into all that.
we got
coming up.
we got a lot to go.
We do. So let's move into the news. Obviously, the biggest news item to discuss yesterday, we lost David Pearson, 83 years old, NASCAR Hall of Famer, very well known in the history of NASCAR, huge part of NASCAR history. Before we start talking, I pulled up some stats on him and stuff, and James, you and I were talking yesterday. Pretty impressive, and interesting to see what he would have done if he ran full time more. But last night, I happened to be going to a meeting for my day job and was listening to the late shift on Sirius XM. Brad Gilly and Brad Doherty were talking with Mike Joy, and Mike Joy came on and told a little story about David Pearson and his domination of the pole position at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So I pulled that and wanted to share that with you guys.
Was it 12 poles in a row at Charlotte, 11 or 12 poles in a row at Charlotte? And for the World 600, the way you won the pole there is I think it was a 4-lap average.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the better of 2 laps. It was either a 4-lap average, that like at Indy, or it was the best of 4 laps. Whatever it was, he won the pole either 11 or 12 times in a row. And after about the 8th pole in a row, Humpy Wheeler, the president of Charlotte, had enough, and they repaved one end of the racetrack where there'd been a dip in the racetrack where he thought Pearson had an advantage qualifying. And the next race, David goes and wins the pole, as he's in victory lane to get the trophy and the money, he jabs Humpy with his elbow, and he goes, "You paved the wrong end."
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
So I could talk to Mike Joy for hours, I'm sure, with the stories that he has. But I thought that was pretty
that was
interesting
great.
about Pearson.
Yeah, that's so great.
So David Pearson, 28 years of racing in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, as it is now known. 105 wins. James, what you said you figured out? What, about a quarter of the time he'd win a race?
Yeah, yeah. So 574 starts and 105 wins. Just to give you to benchmark those numbers, Richard Petty started more than double those races, 1184 for his 200 wins. So David Pearson did twice the damage that Richard Petty did, if you think about it at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean,
I heard Chocolate
it's
Myers
incredible.
talking about it today that he used to say, he used to go to Petty and he used to say, well, if I'd have run all those races, run the full seasons like you, I'd have had those 7 championships. And Petty's response was, well, I did.
That's right. Yeah, and he never ran the entire slate of races.
Yep.
Even the years he won the championship, he missed a handful of races.
Yeah,
here
I'm
and
looking
there.
at it here. 1964, he ran 61 of 62. He ran 48 of 49 and 68.
62 races a season. Good Lord.
I know. 51 of 54 and 69. And then the rest of these, I mean, you're talking 22 of 30, 76, 77, 78. But some of these years, 9 of 31 and 79 with 1 win. He had 6 wins in 72, 17 of 31 races, 11 wins in 73, 18 of 28 races. I mean,
It's just crazy.
and look at some of these seasons. Like you've got 68 was a 16-win season for him, 36 top 5s, 38 top 10s. So you want to talk about your natural top 10s. There's 36 of those 38 top 10s were top 5s for him.
Yeah.
And again, this was back in that era where you could pretty much know who the top 6 were going to be in a race, but still.
And people forget that back in that era, the championship at the end of the season didn't matter as much.
Yeah.
He was going after the big purse races.
Yep.
So he was the hired gun to come into Daytona, Darlington, Charlotte, and he'd go out there and he'd just win the big races.
1976, he ran 22 of 30 races. He won 10 of those. He won essentially half of the races he competed in 1976.
Yeah, 73 he won 11 out of 18.
It's insane.
And 14 top 10s and top 5s.
People would be screaming. This is Kyle Busch in the Xfinity Series, except it's in the Cup Series.
Yeah, 1974. This is a good one. 1974, he ran 19 of 30 and finished 3rd in points. That's how good he was that year.
Yeah.
Average finish of 7 points. His average finishes are just astounding. Yeah, and like Dale Jr. just said it the best, that he's just a badass.
Yeah.
And a lot of drivers revered him for his talent, and when he showed up, he was the guy to beat.
Yeah. Very well respected guy in NASCAR, still pretty well known, I feel, in NASCAR, even with the younger fan base now. Second round Hall of Famer for David Pearson. A lot of people thought he'd get in the first round, but got in the second.
Yeah, he was always right behind Petty.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's kind of symbolic of their careers. Even though I think in all the times they finished 1-2, which was like 63 times, I think Pearson's got the edge on him in those 1-2 finishes. But yeah, he's always been like that second guy behind Petty. So kind of symbolic,
There's still, we still hear about David Pearson in, driving styles. A lot of people compared Jeff Gordon to David Pearson. I've heard a lot of Matt Kenseth compared to David Pearson as well. And so he's one of those guys that has a legacy in the sport. Will always have a legacy in the sport. So
yeah, you can't be as great as David Pearson and ever be forgotten. Even if you are David Pearson, you kind of, you're not as much on the radar as everybody else. You're not Richard Petty. He wasn't out there like that. His talent was such that you can't help but not ignore that. You can't ignore him. You just can't. And I know he's kind of the unsung hero of the sport for in many ways, but man, what a legacy that he left behind though. What a mark. It's a bummer that we've lost him. That we're at that time in the history of our sport. You and I have talked about this many times on this podcast too, but our history is still out there.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are still alive, but we're getting to that point now, where we're going to start losing guys like David.
Yeah.
They're just at that age. So it's the way life goes, but a legend, never to be forgotten. That's for sure.
Definitely. James, I'm going to give you the next two because you added these to the notes, and to be honest, until you added them in the notes, I didn't even know about them. Go ahead with the next news item.
Well, yeah, the first one is maybe kind of quick. Cole Witt.
Yeah.
So Cole Witt retired after ISM. Like that was it. He was done. I did not know that was happening.
Yeah, me neither.
27 years old, and said he's going to go spend more time with the family.
There you go.
I don't know what else to say about Cole.
I mean,
you know,
it really tells you,
where the
that
sport's at, I think, too.
one, it goes to show you. I mean, I don't sympathize with these guys at all. I'm not one that thinks this season needs to be shorter. I'm okay with the way it is. These guys get paid a lot of money to go out and do this. But regardless of that, it's a grueling career. And, you're talking to somebody who's run lower funded teams. So, he's not just showing up in the helicopter or showing up in the jet on Friday and hopping in the car. I'm sure he's doing a lot more, around that. And heck, I'm sure jet is not even in his vocabulary, So,
right.
Unless he can hitch a ride with somebody else. But so, there's a lot to this. And as somebody, I went to 5 races this year, and the amount of travel and missing the family and weekends missed, it's quite a lot. I mean, I can't imagine doing 36 weekends or 36 races plus the other 2 weekends. I mean, it's a grueling thing. And so I get it. If it's not working, family's always going to be more important. And I think Carl Edwards is an example of that too. And you just, at some point, you got to just turn it off and go. And
well, you can either do, well, this is another news item, so maybe this kind of ties in. Well, this is kind of a silly season item, but anyway, you could either do what Jeffrey Earnhardt's going to do,
right?
And you go and you take a chance on yourself and you scale back, but you go for the big ride.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen Priest, right?
Yes.
He's done it.
Yeah, Ryan Priest has got a cup ride now as a result.
Ryan Priest is going to be a cup driver for it, and he's got a pretty decent team. But Cole Witt, he went the route of riding in the back, and maybe got burned out.
Yeah.
And he had some talent coming into the Cup Series. I mean, he was pretty highly touted. Not as much as somebody like Chase Elliott or anything like that, but young talent, regardless. So. Yeah, just seeing these guys, kind of flame out early is, it's natural progression. The next guy is going to come up, but
yeah,
still...
I mean, there's a time in your life when you got to make a decision, and I mean,
yep.
Spencer Gallagher is not an example of this, but Spencer Gallagher did the same thing this season, stepping back and moving into
Yep.
the Ricky Hendrick, the ownership role, and I mean, that's just...
Yep, Kennedy did it too.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of young guys
at some
that are
point
doing
you
it.
have to make the decision, is it worth the direction you're going, or is it time for a change? And
yeah.
So, I mean, good on Cole for being able to make that decision and kind of doing it without a whole lot of spotlight on him. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'm one that, I like the farewell tours. It's cool as a fan to be able to see a driver go out in his last season, but how many times does it really go great? You know what I mean?
Jeff Gordon's the only one that did the retirement tour.
Right. And I mean, Tony's retirement season was disappointing. I mean, all these, there's this disappointment there with it. And I'm I have a lot of respect for the guys that just say, okay, I'm done.
Yep.
Behind the scenes, everybody knew it, or maybe, but in front of the camera, nobody had any idea until bam, it's done. So
yep, it's done and over. So Cole Witt, it was good having him, but the next guy will come up, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, Cole Witt will be one of those guys, and unfortunately, in the videos on YouTube, that's like that. Do you remember that one guy that ran a race or ran some races? So
yeah, yep, that's him.
But yeah, and again, you have to think these guys. Some of these guys are really good drivers in really bad equipment, and you don't get to the Cup Series. Even Tanner Berryhill, you don't get a chance in a Cup car if you're terrible.
Yeah,
I mean, these guys have some talent. You might rip on Paul Menard. But if Paul Menard had money and no talent, he wouldn't be running in the Cup Series.
Yeah, he's enough. His talent is enough.
Exactly. You don't need to have Kevin Harvick talent to get a Cup ride, but you need to have some talent to get a Cup ride.
Yeah, I was listening to the Marty Smith's America podcast. I'm going to give that a little shout out because he had Chase Elliott on this week. And Chase was talking about his transition from Xfinity to Cup. And what he said there was, all the way along his way through Xfinity, there was 2 or 3 guys he had to beat from time to time, but he was usually the top dog.
Right.
And he said, when you get to Cup, what people don't realize is just because there's underfunded teams doesn't mean that it's not full of top dogs.
Right.
it's the same kind of discussion when people say, "Oh, Alabama football could, beat the Cleveland Browns or something."
Right.
It's like, well, you do realize even though the Browns are really bad, they're all professional football players.
Right.
It's they're not, Alabama might have a handful of professional players on their team, but it's not the same level. And when you get to the Cup Series, all these guys, like you said, Eric, it's a great point. They have talent.
Yeah, I've been on the
They're-
sidelines for for high school football, low end college football, high end, Big Ten college football, and NFL, and it's a big jump between those things. And in NASCAR, I've come back to it all the time. The best example I can think of in modern day to show you how tough the Cup Series is William Byron.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a kid that just blew everybody
Dominated
away in
everything.
the other two series, and he did it with natural talent because he came from no racing experience other than video games, and he killed it in those two series, and he won. We didn't mention he won Rookie of the Year this year in the Cup Series, but he has not made a big splash in the Cup Series this year, and I still think he will. But it just goes to show you how difficult it is when you get here.
Oh yeah, no doubt he will. Yep.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys. He'll be there. He'll be there.
So take the next one, James.
Well, another guy stepping away, another professional in the sport, is Joe Moore, one of the voices of MRN. I did not know he was retiring.
Yeah, that's disappointing. To me, the MRN guys hearing these voices that I've heard like my entire life on MRN step away it's tough. Like
Yes.
nothing against any of the new guys because they're great. I mean, I think to me, and again, nothing against PRN radio, but I think MRN has always had the best group of guys.
They do. Yep.
They're excellent, and to get a chance on an MRN broadcast, you've got to have some major skill. But yeah, that's a bummer to see Joe Moore stepping away.
Yeah, he's gonna go do what he wants probably, and he's spent 35 years calling races. That's crazy.
Yeah, there you go. I just turned 37, so my entire life, Joe Moore.
Yeah, Joe Moore. Yeah,
the entire
he's been
time I've
calling-
been watching NASCAR, Joe Moore has been calling races.
I was not even a whisper, and he was calling races. So, one of the things that ties me to Joe Moore, obviously, I've listened to a lot of races on the radio over my life, but I put a lot of hours into the NASCAR Thunder series on EA Sports and the old PlayStation and Xbox days. And Joe Moore did the voices for the intros and stuff.
Nice.
So I always get the "I'm Joe Moore" from, and it was just, yeah. And so when I saw him retiring, I'm like, oh man, there's one of my childhood dudes right there.
See, for me, the
Stepping away.
first time I heard MRN radio was at the track because most of the tracks will play the play the radio broadcast over the PA, and hearing MRN at the track, when you've done that, every time you hear it on the radio, you're at the track. You feel like you're sitting in the stands. You get that feeling. I'm getting chills right now talking about it. That I'm there. It's that feeling of being there. That memory that brings you back to that moment. And so MRN will always be, real special to me.
Synonymous.
So
Yep, synonymous with being at MI Speedway and
yep.
Just
I love listening to the old broadcast too with Eli Gold and even
Oh,
when
yeah.
Alan Bestrick was with MRN and all those guys. Again, nothing against the guys that are there now, but that's my childhood, man.
Speaking of Alabama football, Eli Gold reference. Holy smoke. That's what he does now. He calls Alabama football.
Hey,
and
Eli Gold on MRN radio is great. Eli Gold
He
on
was
TV, not so much.
Yeah, Alan Bestwick, those guys, even, anytime I see any of those guys, it's like that for me.
I
So
miss Bestwick.
yeah, there's a lot of guys I miss.
Yeah, every
But-
time when Bestwick is doing IndyCar races again this year, it's like, dang, can we not get him back to NASCAR?
No kid.
Just
Yeah,
put.
no kid.
I'm sorry, Rick Allen, but put Alan Bestwick in the booth with the NBC crew we've got right now, and it would be spectacular.
Yes.
Maybe, or maybe everybody would hate Alan Bestwick and it wouldn't work. But either way,
Yeah, that's usually how it goes too.
you never know. You never know. So, so the other news item that both of us forgot to add to the list, I added it during the show, is because it happened late last week before we went on the race weekend, but after we were on the podcast. NASCAR announces that it is doing what it needs to do to make an offer and made an offer to buy International Speedway Corporation. And there was a lot of talk on Twitter. There's kind of two lanes that everybody's going with on this. Lane one is if you're going to sell the company's no good without tracks. So let's get the tracks under the company too, so we can sell the company. Now, the one I'm leaning toward is if you have tracks owned by the company, it's easier as the company to say, okay, you got one date now instead of two.
Yes.
And I think that's what this is about. I think this is about eliminating dates, eliminating second dates at ISC tracks. It's ammo to go to SMI and say, look, we did it on our end. It's time for you to do it on your end as well. And this is shortening the schedule and adding some tracks to the schedule, in my humble opinion. What do you think, James?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you're right. I also think that they are. I think they're building that portfolio though too.
Yeah, definitely.
They want to show the entire value of what NASCAR is, and the best way to do that is to have everything under one umbrella. So, if you're acquiring ARCA and you're doing all these things, yeah, that's part of it. But like you said, now they've got some room with doing this that they can just, even if they're not taking dates away, they can start moving some stuff around.
Yep,
And-
they've got a lot more control here now.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what I think is their number one goal. But I also think that I think it's a twofold thing. I think they're doing everything they can to beef up what that number is going to be, because I think the France family is going to eventually sell here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be an interesting thing to continue to follow for sure.
Yeah.
So
Because 2020, like you and I have said before too, texting and whatever, 2020 is when we're going to start seeing some shakeup.
Yep. Yeah,
it's gonna
2020
happen.
is going to be a big pivotal moment in NASCAR. Whether that's positive or negative, we'll find out. I have my theories both directions, a lot of which I won't discuss on the podcast. But honestly, the future of NASCAR, a large part of it, in my opinion, hinges on 2020.
Yep, I think 2019 is the transition year. That's kind of like your prologue.
Well, we're already starting to transition. Look at the changes in leadership that we've had. I mean, Brian France helped that along, but there's changes at the leadership level. I listened to Nate Ryan's podcast with what's the new president of NASCAR's name? I can't.
Oh, Steve Phelps?
Yeah, Steve Phelps. Great podcast with him. Obviously, anytime Nate Ryan does a podcast.
Yeah, Nate Ryan's. It doesn't have to be said.
If you don't listen to NASCAR and NBC podcast, you're missing out. He does an excellent job. So that was interesting to hear that. So I mean, we've seen some changes at the upper levels of NASCAR. So that transition is starting, and will continue it over the next couple of years.
And with the rules package next year, we're going to see what the on-track action looks like. So yeah, this stuff's all, we're in flux right now.
Yep. Very, very, very big pivotal moment for NASCAR, and again, we'll see whether that's a positive or a negative.
Absolutely.
A little bit of silly season news, not a whole lot. Announced this week, Monster Energy is leaving to go to Chip Ganassi Racing. Gee, I wonder why that would be.
Yep.
So, I don't think there's any thought anymore that Kurt Busch isn't going to that one car. So this is just another piece in that puzzle. Kind of interesting that the sponsorship announcement was made before the driver announcement, though. I kind of feel like, I don't know who Kurt's got working for him as far as representation, but it kind of feels like something's out of whack there. And maybe it's just the way they go about it, but something just is different.
Kurt's kind of out of whack.
Yes. It's just different how they do it. Even with Stuart Haas last year, how we didn't know until so late whether he was coming back to Stuart Haas, and maybe it's because Monster's the sponsor and Monster's unpredictable. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. Stuart Haas was probably having tough negotiations, and Kurt was going to do everything he could. I'm surprised. The move still surprises me, and even with the moment that Tony and Kurt had at the track this weekend, just surprises me that he's moving on.
Yeah, maybe there's more behind the scenes that we don't know.
Maybe.
There's got to be. There's got to be more to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. I'm with you. I can't think of a good reason for him to make this move that it's going to benefit, unless it's just money, and there's more money over there. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
But I can't
maybe
imagine. Is there really more money? Maybe Ganassi's got the money to pump into it to try and get a
or
bigger name.
If he wants to transition, that's the only thing I'm thinking is does he want to transition from Cup into the sports car scene and possibly IndyCar?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think the
Ganassi's
chances
got
are
that.
of an Indy 500 ride now?
Oh yeah, I mean he probably would want to do it again.
Yeah.
I mean he's done it once. We're seeing Fernando Alonso is going to come back. He's going to run another one. So That's the only thing is Chip's got those ties to other forms of racing that maybe
he's
that's
not gonna go. He's not gonna leave NASCAR and go race IndyCar. I mean, he might run a couple races, but there's other. I mean, unless he's gonna run Formula One, it's not doing him any good to stay at Stewart Haas for.
Right. Exactly.
So Ganassi definitely has a sports car and things like that he could move on to. So who knows? Who knows what's up with Kurt?
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. Those Busch brothers, man.
Right.
Something.
So Stewart Haas is losing Monster Energy. They're also losing Outback Steakhouse, which will not return to Stewart Haas Motorsports or Stewart Haas Racing. They are going to remain with a personal services contract with Kevin Harvick next season, though.
Yes, and Harvick has his races covered. Right. It's not a problem. That's just another movement out of SHR.
Yeah, so. A couple of his other sponsors have stepped up to pick up the extra dates, so it's not.
Jimmy John's is backing off too. Yeah, I saw.
Interesting.
A little bit, but they're still going to be on the car, but they're just doing less races.
Interesting. We already mentioned Jeffrey Earnhardt. Jeffrey Earnhardt going to be Kyle Busch's teammate next season. James, this is how you broached it to me.
Yeah, that's how I texted you.
So James sends me the message on what was it? I think it was Saturday. He sends me this message.
You were at hockey. Yeah,
you
were at hockey.
And I didn't want to see any results for the Xfinity race because I wanted to watch the Xfinity race when I got home. So I'm like, you got to give me more information than this because I'm not following you.
Yeah, those who listen to the podcast know Eric and I text about NASCAR constantly, but never during live races.
Right.
It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, I'm always time shifting. We've talked about that plenty on the podcast, so I don't like to get the spoilers, and especially Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday are rough. Sundays, a lot of times I can, if I work it right, I can position myself. I'm pretty sure I'm going to position myself for Homestead this week.
Yeah.
But so 9 races with JGR next year in the Xfinity Series, basically betting on himself like Ryan Preece. James, we talked about it before we came on the podcast, but what do you think? Is this a good move for Jeffrey Earnhardt, or is this sealing his deal for Jeffrey Earnhardt?
This is the last ditch effort for Jeffrey Earnhardt. If he can't have success driving a Joe Gibbs Xfinity car, then he'll never have success.
That is the thing. I mean, this is completely betting on yourself. This is believing that either you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun in your last season in NASCAR, or you have enough confidence in yourself that you're going to be able to prove yourself. Because if you're in one of these cars and you don't win. Especially with what Ryan Preece did this year, if he doesn't win a race next year, it's over for Jeffrey Earnhardt.
Yeah, he at least has to show something.
I think he's got to win.
Yeah,
I think he's got to win, or he's got to dominate some races and get wrecked out or something.
You're probably right. He has to do the Ross Chastain. In the 42 car.
Jeffrey's not enough on people's radar in what he's running to be able to count on that. No. You know, I mean, Preece was the same way. Preece was good in the, in modifies and stuff, but he was relatively unknown in the cups in the high series. So he needed to get out there and win. And I think Preece could have probably gotten away with just running really well, like that New Hampshire race that he led a lot of laps and then lost. That would have been enough for Preece to be able to make a name in the series. But now that he's won, and like you said, Chastain, who's done a lot in an underfunded team and then come out and won in the Xfinity Series in a good ride. Now he's got the good ride next year. Earnhardt's got to win, or he's destined to run field fillers.
He's going to run the Daytona race in the Xfinity next year. And can you imagine if an Earnhardt can get to victory lane at Daytona?
That
would be, and it wouldn't be a massive deal at this point, but it would be a big deal in our inner NASCAR circle. I mean, that would be
no ill will toward Jeffrey Earnhardt. I wish him all the luck. I hope he comes in there and lights it up.
Give him credit for getting this ride and going for it.
Yeah, I hope he comes in there and he does an excellent job and proves to everybody that he's a great driver, and we keep an Earnhardt in the series. You know what I mean? Yep. It can't hurt to have an Earnhardt in NASCAR.
No, and he's tried really hard to up his profile. He did a Hulu show. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but when he was driving the Hulu car in the Cup Series, he did a show, like a docuseries on Hulu. Like, it was like 4 or 5 episodes. And he's done a lot of things to try to up his profile, but this is it, man.
Yep.
Go out there and do something with it. You can. I mean, he can do it. I don't know. I mean, it's an Xfinity ride with Joe Gibbs. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, from what I've seen him, I mean, he's a good guy. So good luck to him. Hope it works well for him.
Yep, go get it, man.
All right, let's talk about the championship, James, because we've gone long already when we thought we were going to be quick, which we never are. Let's talk Homestead. So what we're gonna do? We're going to we're gonna start with. Sorry, I'm distracted. Is the grandstand notes from last week, or is grandstand sold out for Homestead this week? Did you add that? Sorry,
I didn't add that.
Okay,
Nope.
that is left over from last week then for Phoenix. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our picks for the race like normal. We're not gonna go real in depth into stuff. And what I want to do, James, is I want to go through our picks for the championship for all three series. But we're gonna start with trucks, go to Xfinity, and go with Cup. Because I do have some NASCAR sent out some pretty good press notes this week, so I want to bump through the 4 Cup guys, but we'll do that last. So, race picks first of all, and let's do this as well. This is the first week and only week this season that we can pick the same guy for a race winner.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, chances are we're probably going to be picking who we think is going to win the championship.
Yes.
The other thing that I will say, James, and I'm changing all this up on you. I should have let you know this ahead of time so you can prepare for
Let's
it.
do it.
Dark horse this week is anybody not in the top 4 in the championship race.
Ooh, I like that too.
So, there we go.
So should we do our championship discussion first and then race picks?
Probably, yeah. You know what? That's
if
probably
we do
right.
our race picks, we're going to give away who I think, because
let's do
the
that.
guy who
You're
wins
right.
this race is going to win the championship. It's the way it's been ever since this thing's been started in 2014. So.
I agree. So let's do that. So let's start with the truck series. The top 4 in the truck series for the championship. And we won't do race picks for these guys because these 2 series have not always been the race winner winning the championship. So truck series, Brett Moffitt, Justin Haley, Johnny Sauter, and Noah Gragson are your top 4 racing for the championship this Friday night at Homestead Miami Speedway. Let's see. I get the first race pick. So for the Cup series. So do you want me to take the first pick on this one and we'll alternate, or you want to take both?
You can have this one because I owe you a first pick anyway. So
all right. So
go ahead.
I
take it.
I have my pick and then I have my probable. But okay, my pick is Brett Moffitt. Brett Moffitt has been able to come through in a team that hasn't had the business to be there. He's been able to do it multiple times. He's been able to sneak through and get wins when it's mattered. Got to talk to Brett a few times this season, and I think this team, they haven't been as fiery this late part of the season as they were in the mid part of the season, but Brett Moffitt is my pick for the championship in the truck series.
I like your pick, sir. I'm going to go a little bit different, and I don't know if I want him to win, but I just think if anybody's going to do it, it's Johnny Sauter.
Yeah, he was my alternate. He's my probably going to do it.
Yeah, I got to go with the guy who's probably going to be the experienced guy, but he's also won this thing before.
Yeah.
So he's won some races and he's won some championships. So I'll take the guy with the experience versus the young crowd. That being said, I don't think he's the most talented guy in this bunch. You know, I think Brett Moffitt's probably the best driver.
Yeah, Brett Moffitt's more in his prime too at this point.
Johnny Sauter's kind of like that grizzled veteran though. So if it comes down to trying to win a championship, I'll take Johnny Sauter.
We haven't heard anything about Brett Moffitt for next year, have we?
Not that I know of.
That's a guy you could grab up somewhere.
He's been struggling with sponsorship and stuff this year. There was a point earlier this year where he didn't know if he was going to race the full season, right?
Yeah, when they went to, was it Kentucky?
Yeah, Kentucky or Chicago maybe.
You're right. It was Chicago because Chicago they got a sponsor midweek and then came out and won Chicago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was because I remember it was right around those times when I was at the races because I asked them a couple times about sponsorship and stuff, and they didn't have their season wrapped up as far as sponsorship until after Eldora.
Yeah, if I'm rooting for a guy, it's him. Yeah. I love that story.
Yeah, I do too. I hope he gets it done. So.
Yep.
All right, Xfinity Series, your top 4 racing for the championship: Cole Custer, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Daniel Hemrick. No Justin Allgaier, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, no Allgaier, no Elliott Sadler going for it in his final race.
If Allgaier was in this thing, I'd have picked him. But I think I have a feeling we're both going to pick the same guy here. But James, go for it.
Well, I think you're going to pick. I'm going to try to go opposite you a little bit. And this is not a surprise based on a lot of people talking this week on, look what he did last year. I'm going to take Cole Custer.
Yeah. That's a good pick.
I mean, he might surprise people, and it surprises me that I even said it.
Yeah.
I'll take him because I know who you're going to pick. And you're probably going with the guy who really is the favorite.
Yeah, I can't bet against Christopher Bell. The problem with Christopher Bell is that he has historically been excellent except when he needs to be. And that's my concern for Christopher Bell. But he was able to get the win this weekend and
Tell
get
you
himself
what,
in.
That was a big moment.
Yeah,
Saturday
it was
for him.
huge. It was huge.
He had to win. That was one of the bigger NASCAR race wins we've had in a few years, because it was all on the line. And if he doesn't win this championship, it's a complete disappointment for him. He's been that good.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to bet against him. Cole Custer's a great pick. Obviously, he was excellent last year at Homestead. So, we'll see what he ends up doing. It could be interesting.
Dominated that race last year, 180 some laps led, and he just came off a 1.5 mile win at Texas. So
yeah,
I mean, it's so strange to me that Cole Custer might be the Xfinity Series champion, but
I know, right?
he's put himself in position to do it.
I think it automatically elevates him to a new level in that series. You know, in NASCAR in general, if he's able to pull it off, suddenly it's not looking so silly to put him in a Cup car down the road. So
yep, absolutely.
And then it's the championship for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. So let's run through these a little bit. Again, NASCAR had some great news and notes this week on these guys. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Joey Logano are our top four. So one of the interesting things that I found that in these notes is, for one, we've got 3 guys who are racing for their second championship in the Cup Series. One guy who does not yet have one.
Yes.
So hungriest guy, probably Joey Logano, I would say. But everybody else racing for their second championship. And in doing that, they are racing to become just the 16th driver in series history to win 2 or more championships, which is just mind-boggling if you think about it. But let's look at who's won championships in the Cup Series. Richard Petty, or who's won multiple. Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmie Johnson all have 7. Jeff Gordon 4.
Hold on, Dale Earnhardt.
Sorry,
Dale
what did I say? What did I say?
You threw the junior on there. I was
Sorry.
like, hold on.
Yeah, sorry. Jeff Gordon, Darrell Waltrip. Jeff Gordon has 4. Darrell Waltrip, Cale Yarborough, David Pearson, Lee Petty, and Tony Stewart all have 3. Herb Thomas, Tim Flock, Joe Weatherly, Ned Jarrett, Terry Labonte, and Buck Baker all have 2. That's it. Everybody else who's a champion has 1 championship.
Such a list.
You know, it's interesting to think that how small this list really is of multiple time champions. And we have a 75% chance of adding to that this week. So let's run through here real quick. I just want to look here. I didn't actually specifically pick these things out, but let's see if I can come up here. I'm probably going to completely blow this now.
One thing I had heard that I really liked was, if you were going to pick the 4 best drivers since 2014 in this system, this is it. These are the guys. I know.
I agree with that.
Johnson's got one of the titles, but Logano's been there. This is his 3rd time running for this thing.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 guys who have won this race.
This is his 3rd time running for it, and honestly, he should have been there the other 2 times as well, because one was an encumbered win that kept him out, and the other one was him deciding to rough it up with Matt Kenseth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, Logano realistically could have been in all 5 of these easy.
Yeah, he's probably the best of the format that hasn't won one yet.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure. For sure. So if you remove Johnson's championship out of there, Logano's the next guy.
Yep. 10.9 is Busch's average finish for the first 9 races of the playoffs. Interesting number. Let's see.
Want to know his average finish at Homestead?
Yeah, go for it.
18.5. That has to be his worst.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Has to be. Now,
but he won it the year he won the championship.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, he did. And he was very darn close last year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this year has been essentially a career year for Kyle Busch.
It's been his best year, yeah. It's been his best year.
It's been excellent. So
win, lose, or draw on this championship, this is his best year.
And then teaming up with Adam Stevens for the title. Adam Stevens, Kyle Busch have been together since 2015. They've run 126 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series races together. Out of those, 22 wins, 63 top 5s, 87 top 10s, 5,442 laps led, and 14 poles, 1 championship, and 4 consecutive Championship 4 appearances, 4 consecutive Monster Energy Cup Series playoff appearances together. So pretty interesting there.
Yeah, it's really good. Just that's all you need to know. Really.
Kevin Harvick, heck, we've talked about his season like crazy this year. He has had a heck of a year. Kind of quieted down a little bit here in the playoffs, but 8 wins this year. So Atlanta, Las Vegas, ISM Raceway, Dover, Kansas, New Hampshire, Michigan, and Texas are his wins. So
Lots of 1.5 and 2 milers on there.
Exactly. 9.0 is his average finish during the 2018 season. Average starting position at 8.7 is pretty good.
Yep, and he is the best rated driver of these 4 at Homestead.
Okay.
His average finish is 6.8, and his driver rating is 106.
15
Very
top,
high.
15 top 10s at Homestead Miami Speedway, most all time.
Yes.
13 career playoff wins. He's second only to Jimmy Johnson's 29.
That's so ridiculous too. 29. Jesus.
Right.
That's a whole nother.
18 stage wins this year, most in the series. 22 top 5s this year, 28 top 10s. So quite a season for Kevin Harvick.
Yes.
Martin Truex. We'll go Joey Logano next. Joey Logano's next on my list. Logano's just got the two wins. Yes, 2 wins this season. Talladega and Martinsville, the biggest track and the smallest track this year.
Yes.
But again, we've talked about made it the championship 3 times in the new playoff format. 4 top 10 finishes at Homestead Miami Speedway. His best finish at Homestead Miami Speedway is 4th. He did it in 2015 and 2016. 5 stage wins this year for Joey. Definitely lower numbers on this end than some of the other guys. 78 laps total led at Homestead Miami Speedway and 9 starts for Joey Logano.
Thing with the Joey Logano we have to probably mention though too is he's kind of hit his stride at the right time. I know he crashed last weekend, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, no.
That race
Yeah,
stuff
we didn't even
matter.
mention that he crashed last weekend, but
Yeah,
it didn't
but
matter.
he was also locked in before anybody else. So special attention paid to that Homestead car. A little bit of a head start over everybody else.
There you go. Logano has the best average finish in 9 playoff races this year of 9.4 and recorded a victory at Martinsville to win his shot at Homestead. So let's see. Streak of top 10 playoff finishes was snapped at ISM Raceway Sunday with his 37th place finish after his crash. And last, Martin Truex Jr. He is, of course, our defending champion. He's made it to the championship 3 times in his career in the new playoff format. He has finished 4 times in the top 5 at Homestead Miami Speedway. And let's see here. 4 wins this season: Fontana, California, Pocono, Sonoma. Fontana, California is one track. Pocono, Sonoma, and Kentucky. See, I should have prepped this ahead of time, but I didn't.
That was great.
It honestly just came in an email not too long before we went on the podcast, and I thought it was worth bumping through. So
It's really good. No, this is good stuff.
11th is his average finish during the 2018 season. He has 10 stage wins over the year. His average finish at Homestead Miami Speedway is 11.5. So,
and the defending race winner as well.
yeah, defending race winner. He has led 996 laps this season, and 189 laps led at Homestead Miami Speedway in his career.
Yeah, it's a juggernaut of these. One of the surprising things of this championship is that all 3 of these guys made it.
Yeah,
I really am surprised that they all made it. I'm glad they did.
That was in my notes. All the craziness that happened in the playoffs and the uncertainty, Harvick's penalty, the fact that these guys waited till the end of it to win, and the big 3 are still here.
Yep, they all survived.
Yep.
Truex, we thought maybe he might not make it, but that team they stuck it out, and they're gonna race for the championship in their final race. That's pretty cool.
So let's make our picks for Homestead Miami Speedway. We're gonna pick the winner because, again, it's gonna be one of these guys. So I'm gonna tell you who's not gonna win Homestead Miami this weekend. It is not gonna be Martin Truex Jr. He's going to live up to my prediction, and he will not win this season anymore. So Truex is not gonna win. I'm on the fence. I'm really on the fence. I'm going to go Hart instead of like realistically thinking what's going to happen. So I'm going to go Kyle Busch.
That's your boy.
Kyle's gonna be my pick to get the win. I think Kyle is a different person than he even was when he won the championship. I think he's matured a lot, despite what some people might think. Despite shoving Rutledge Wood out of the way so he can do his bow at Phoenix.
God dang it, Kyle.
But and everybody gets riled up, and I thought it was funny. I think Rutledge probably thought it was funny. I'm sure it was no big deal, but of course it's Kyle, so everybody's gonna hate on him about it. But yeah, I think he's a different guy. I think he's got what it takes now to buckle down and get the win at the end. He did it this weekend at Phoenix, and kind of felt like he did it kind of easily at the end of the race. So
Yes.
I say Busch had a career season, and he's gonna make it even better by becoming a 2-time champion.
I think my pick would be a lot easier if one Rodney Childers was going to be on the box.
That is definitely a factor in choosing Harvick. Which, by the way, NASCAR announced that Rodney Childers will be able to celebrate with the team if they do win, despite the fact that he is suspended. Usually NASCAR will not let them anywhere that they need to have a hard card to get into, but they will allow him to celebrate with the team. So, if
that being said, if that team ever needed a little extra motivation to go any faster than they've already been this year, that might be it. And I picked him from the beginning of the year, and I got to stick with it now. So I got to go ahead. Kevin Harvick wins the race, wins the championship, and puts the exclamation point on one of the best seasons that we've seen in NASCAR.
It's hard to bet against him. It's hard to bet against him.
It's gonna be hard. They're gonna, that car is going to unload as the fastest car there.
Yeah,
That's what everybody else has to overcome.
I think I'm with you. I think the biggest reason that I am not picking him is because of the Rodney Childers situation, which I think likely is more motivation than it is harm. But with
There could be a late race call.
with the pit calls and the errors that they've had this year to take the quarterback out is really tough to me.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be a big
be really
detriment
hard
to overcome.
Yep.
So, all
Tony
right,
Gibson's gonna have to guide Kevin Harvick to this championship.
there you go.
Yep. But you know what? When I think about the leader of that 4 team, God, I know Rodney's really good, but I still feel like Kevin Harvick is the leader of that team.
Yeah.
Like when I think about the leader of the 48 team, I think Chad Knaus.
Here's the other thing too. They were on the bubble this week because of the penalty. They certainly were not locked in even close to it when they had their trouble, and everybody stayed calm at
Yes.
Phoenix. And
Yep.
that's scary. If they're going to be in a do or die situation and be able to stay that calm, that means that they're ready for this race.
Yeah.
You
If
know.
they can, if that, this could go one way, and I think it could be pretty likely. Kevin Harvick could come to town and just stomp everybody out.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not unrealistic.
No, he could lead every lap.
Yeah, I mean, he could come in and just absolutely blow everybody's doors off. That being said, I don't know.
And
just
I
don't know.
think he's the only one of these 4 that can do that.
Yes, yeah.
Nobody else is going to dominate this race. Harvick has potential to come and
No.
dominate this race.
And if Logano's going to get this thing done, it's going to take. He's going to be fast enough. It's just he's going to need a break.
Logano's going to have that late race restart that we didn't get last year.
Yeah, he's going to need a break somewhere.
Yep.
Somewhere, but he's going to be fast too. Joey's no slouch.
No.
I know his numbers aren't what these other 3 are, but
He was likely on his way to a championship when he wrecked with Carl Edwards.
yeah, Yep.
So,
yeah.
right?
He had
right?
Carl
He was
Edwards
racing
right,
the championship that year, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he had Carl
Okay.
Edwards right where he wanted him because
Yeah.
that was the year Carl Edwards. I remember Carl Edwards could not restart to save his life that entire season.
Yep.
And all Joey had to do was clear him, and it just turned into a disaster.
Yep. So, all right. Dark Horse. And again, Dark Horse is anybody not in the top 4.
Do I get first dark horse?
You get first Dark Horse, man.
Kyle Larson.
I know where you're going. Yeah. I knew where you're going on that one.
That doesn't have a win at Homestead, and he's the highest rated driver by far, which is crazy.
I'm not even ready for this pick. Hold on a second. Let me get to.
Kyle Larson's driver rating is 109. So think about how great Kevin Harvick is with 17 races and 15 top 10s, and Kyle Larson's statistics are even stronger.
Yeah. Oh, Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin, and I'm going to say Denny sneaks in, gets himself a win, and keeps
He's done
the
that
streak
here
alive.
before.
Yep.
He's done that here before, yeah. So Johnson and Knaus limp out, huh?
Yeah. They're not going to be. I mean,
Chad's already mailed it in.
yeah, it's over. It's all about next year for Jimmy.
When Chad didn't fight for the Texas situation,
Yeah.
that was the writing on the wall.
Yeah, at this point, move on to next year, and there you go.
And Lowe's goes home.
Yep.
All right.
Be cool to see that old Lowe's car back on the track, though. The rookie car.
Yeah. I love that Pride scheme looked really good on a Camaro. That car looked really
It
sharp.
looked really weird with all the contingency decals gone.
Yeah, they all do though. They all look weird.
Yeah, it's really strange. Be interesting what they do with that space going forward.
Yeah.
All right, James, did we miss anything? We got it all out?
Championship is picked and predicted, and we picked it over. I don't know if there's anything else we can do.
And neither of us picked the same guy. We went separate on everything, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's more fun.
It is more fun that way.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah. That's part of the reason I went with Bush, too. But I don't know,
Well,
man.
that's the reason I went with Cole Custer. I mean,
Yeah.
Christopher Bell's
Cole's a good pick.
Yeah, he's gonna be tough. I think.
Yeah.
I just don't know Christopher Bell for that Xfinity race. He's gonna be just a monster.
The one cool thing about the Cup Final Four is that this is this the first year we haven't got somebody in there that's kind of like I guess they
There's
probably
no
really
Ryan.
shouldn't be there.
Yeah, there's
I mean,
no Ryan. And
The year Jimmy Johnson won it, he was really that guy.
was that guy? Yeah.
I mean,
He's probably the worst driver to win the championship in this format, which
Yeah.
is crazy because he's the best driver of all time.
right, exactly. Okay, so we go to Homestead this weekend. We wrap the season up. Can you believe it, James? We've made it through almost 2 whole seasons.
Full seasons of podcasting
With
for your
podcast.
pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, James, where can they find you on social media if they want to chat with you during the week?
At James Cush on Twitter.
You can find me at TSuperspeedway on Twitter. You can find the podcast at facebook.com/thesuperspeedway. Our website is thesuperspeedway.com. You can go there, check out our show notes, click on some of the links for the articles that we've discussed today. Look for old stories from past races that we've covered, photos, etc. All kinds of fun stuff there. Hopefully more next season. We'll come up with some ideas, try and beef it up a little bit. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. If you like what you hear, you want to become a part of the podcast, you want to support it, visit patreon.com/thesuperspeedway and become a patron today. I think that's it, James. We go to Homestead. We don't go to Homestead, but NASCAR goes to Homestead this weekend. We're going to crown 3 championships, Homestead Miami Speedway, and I think all 3 championships are up in the air. This format is great. I love the fact that it goes across all 3 series, and we don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be fun. It'll be fun for sure.
Absolutely. This is my favorite NASCAR. I have a lot of them, but this is my favorite week of the season. It's turned into such a spectacle.
This beats, I don't know. Daytona is pretty special because
Yeah, Daytona is its own kind of monster.
you've got your whole season coming up yet. The disappointment about this is we're going to crown a champion Sunday, and then we got to go 2 months without NASCAR.
Yeah.
So that's I mean, I can use the break, trust me. And by the way, guys, while we're taking a break, we won't be taking a break. I still plan to have content for you guys in the off season. We've got some ideas for some off season discussion. Might do the every other week thing like we did before. James and I really haven't discussed it, so but we'll figure something out. We'll definitely still be
have a
still be
staff
around.
meeting. Another
Yep.
staff meeting.
There you go. So Homestead Miami Speedway this weekend. We'll talk championship next week and much more. So thanks everybody for listening. And until then, let's head to the track this weekend and go racing.